Everyone. Today we are the 26th of June, and I hope that you are watching today live with us as we have this conversation. At the same time, you can watch it later on because the stuff that we share on these chats are so invaluable. Give us the insights, give us the skills, the tips, the tricks to make sure that we as property investors are utilizing as much as we can of our properties, and of course of the strategies that we have access to. And I think that's part of what we're going to open up today is, well, what strategies do we have access to, as property investors? And there's such a wide range, and all of us tend to gravitate to one or the other kind of strategies. And I'll open up some of those because I have multiple strategies. I have student house, I have the normal buy to let in the top end, I have multi-lets, I have student housing, I have commercial, I have vacant land, and of course I have Airbnb. I have purchasing a property for Airbnb, and I have rent to rent for Airbnb. And we'll certainly discuss that. And really today is so much around how do we monetize our strategies and at the same time put in less effort. Can we use automation? Can we use systems that will generate the income that we're wanting, freeing us up to do the things that we love doing? And I think for me, that is the fundamental purpose for me of property. And, when I work with a lot of people, one of the things that I ask is, what are you wanting? You might be passionate about property, but for many of us, property is a tool. It's a tool that will give us something. And in my case, there are a couple of things that are absolutely important, and I am constantly reminded of what property means for me. Property is a tool that enables me to have more time so I can get it back, so I can go and travel if I want to. It gives me access to non-locations, in other words, other locations out there, because if I have time, well, what am I going to do with the time? I want to travel, I want to spend with my family, I want to do a whole range of things. So it gives me that access to locations. And of course, the third thing that property does is it gives me the funds to be able to do it, because there's no point in having time and having a beautiful location if you can't get out of there, or you can't replicate it, or you can't eat good food at where you're at. And trust me, I have spent many months and years in my youth traveling on a shoestring. If you remember those books, like Thailand on a shoestring and the US on a shoestring before the internet, that's what we used to do. We would have to go and we'd have a certain amount of money and we'd have to string it out as much as possible. Otherwise, you just couldn't travel anywhere. Whereas for me, about maybe 5-8 years ago, I changed that and I said, well, hang on, I can now afford to go to these places, even if it was just for a weekend. That's right. Last year, it was December, I went to New York for a weekend. I mean, I talk and I share this, and I think sometimes that's just crazy. I mean, flying all that way to New York for a weekend. Yes, it was a business trip, but still just going to do that. And I remember standing in Times Square and just, reflecting, I've come here for this weekend and I'm going to fly back home. Just insane. And that's really part of what we want to open up here. And yes, I had a good clickbait title for today's conversation, because one of the things that I really am passionate about, as many know, is the Airbnb short-term letting, because that also includes booking.com and Verbo and all the other platforms where this thing called short-term letting is. And I want to chat about it because it's on my mind a lot, this risk that we have in South Africa, and it's coming down the line. And it doesn't mean that it's not a good model, but it's an aspect of the Airbnb which I believe, again, incorporated into your strategy, and the risk will fall away for you. And I think that's really important. I mean, there's a lovely quote that talks about, in Africa, the lion and the gazelle, and it refers to the lion chasing the gazelle. And in many ways, if there's a risk for us in the property sector, I just got to make sure that I'm in front of the risk so that it doesn't impact me. And in the same way as, the fastest gazelle will outpace itself and the lion will take down the gazelle that's the slowest. And I do feel that if you're out there as a property investor, especially in the Airbnb world, and you're not keeping up to date with what the trends are, where things are happening, you run the risk of falling behind. And falling behind in this context means earning less income, running the risk of theft and security, and of course, just the hassles of trying to manage properties, the Airbnb properties, and it's not really working successfully for you. And I think this is such a great opportunity for us to chat about this. and to unpack this. And what I'm going to ask is in the background, we've also got Alani with us. And if there are a whole lot of questions, because I can't really see them at the moment, Alani, if you can maybe put them somewhere so that we can view them, and then we can bring them up, because what a great opportunity. If you're watching this live, you've got an opportunity to ask me a question directly, and that's exactly what this is for. If you've got a question about the Airbnb, the short-term letting, how to dominate your competition, how to get listed first on Airbnb, how to ensure safety and security, what kind of furniture do you use, what kind of titles do you use in your description, how do you maximize your pricing and your occupancy so that you're generating incredible cash flow, you've got that opportunity to ask us today and me right now, so we can look at that and I can give you my honest opinion around that. So really, I'm going to dive in, because I don't see there's a question there yet. And what I want to make sure is that, this, when I said, are we at risk here in South Africa? I think a lot about the Airbnb, and I've heard and watched a lot about the chats around what I see is increasing here in South Africa. Is consider this. We, especially in this sector with SAPIN and in the work that I do with the Airbnb investors, is we want to heavily automate as much as possible the Airbnb process. And what I mean by automation is we want the guests to be able to book without us having to advertise. We want them to be able to pay without us having to collect the money ourselves, because Airbnb and Booking.com does that. We want the guests to be able to get the instructions of how to find the place and how to get into the place without us having to be involved, because sometimes the guests arrive at 11 o'clock at night and 2 o'clock in the morning. But we want to know how to automate that, because it's one thing to have one property and stand there and shake the guest's hand and say, well, welcome to my place, and this is how this looks, and this is how this looks. But that's just one property, and you're really going to give up an hour of your time and even more when you can scale this and automate it. I mean, what happens when you have 5 units, 10 units, 15, 20? And that's exactly what we're aiming for, is how do we increase our profits with the least amount of effort so we can benefit from all those things that we want to do in creating the lives that we love to live. And in this conversation, we're coming around to, well, we've automated the listing, the booking, the collection of payment, the guest instructions of how to get in, also the instructions about how to use your place, then how to leave your unit. All those kinds of things is exactly what we want to unpack and get clear on. But imagine this, we've automated all of that, which is what a significant number of you listening possibly have already done, right? And I want to deal with this one first. I'll come to the question I see on the screen about, well, how do I actually start, and tell me more about Airbnb. But I want to dive into this specific question that I posed in my title, but are we at risk? So a lot of people use the lock boxes, because if you can imagine, your guest is going to come to your place, and somewhere on a wall, the gate, maybe the garage door, somewhere, even in a body corporate, in a building, you can sometimes have a lockbox. And a lockbox is a box that's locked that has a digital code on, a combination code often. And if your guest knows the code, they will put the code, open the lockbox, and take out the keys and the remotes so they can get into your place. Fantastic. So you've got a way in which your guest can access the keys without you there. Your guest opens up the door, enjoys their stay, and on exit, you tell them, please put the keys back into the lockbox. The lockbox closes. They scramble the code so that no one else can just come and open straight away, and so they leave. And that, I would probably say, is 99.9% of the listings in South Africa that are automating their check-ins. What a great way to do that, right? In it comes, get the keys and take it out. So I just want to put pause on that, because in many ways, if you think about your general renting of a property, those who have just bought a property and renting it to a tenant for 12 months for long term, you're in effect doing something similar, in that you're giving your tenant the keys to the place, and then they have those keys for a year. And when they leave, whether it's a year or later, and they exit the lease, they clean the place and they hand you back the keys, and then you will give those same keys to the next tenant. So my question here is, when I was in America and investing in America and had properties in America, it was literally mandatory that at every tenant changeover, they re-keyed the property. In other words, they replaced all the locks so that if the previous tenant had copies, they could still not get into the house with the new tenant being there. I mean, just imagine, I've made copies of these keys, given the keys back to the landlord, disappeared, I've gone and lived my own life, but I still have the same key that I could get into that same house the next month, 6 months later, 8 months later. And in South Africa, I don't know one rental agent, managing agent, big, small, private, whatever it is, I don't know any rental agency that mandates key changes, like lock changes at tenant changeover. So now take that into the Airbnb world, where in one night I have a guest coming in, they have the keys, they open up, they stay 1 night, 2 night, 3 night, they leave and they put the keys, those keys and those remotes back in the lockbox and disappear. What is preventing that guest from duplicating that key? They've got 3-4 days. They can go to locksmith, just get it cut. They hand back the originals to me, say goodbye. I give them a great review. Thanks so much for your great stay. Loved it here. Disappear. And now I go back onto your listing and I look at your listing and I see where there's a free evening, a free night, where I know that there's not going to be a guest in the place. And I casually go up. I can wear a hood, I can wear a baseball cap, whatever it is. I go up, open the door with the spare key that I've got. I don't need the lockbox anymore. I actually even probably know the lockbox code from the weeks before visit. I can get the original keys, but let's say I don't even want to do that. I can just take the key that I've duplicated. I know that there's no guest there tonight, open it up, and I can clean your place out. Now, the fact that you might say, well, the neighbor around me probably could, they might see that something looks strange, but it's an Airbnb. There are strange people coming in and out, carrying their luggage, not their luggage. They're not going to do anything because it's not the same tenant who's coming in every time. It's a new guest every 2-3 days. So how is that neighbor then going to alert the owner, you, to say, hey, something's not quite right here. It looks like someone's cleaning out your place. And this is a huge concern for me, because when the chances out there, the thieves, the burglars realize that all they have to do is book one night in an Airbnb, they can suss out the place and they can duplicate the keys, and then they can come back when no one is there and no one will interrupt them, and they can clean you out. I think then Airbnb in South Africa is going to have a real rundown, because it's going to be so easy. No one has to break in. No one has to bypass alarms. No one has to run the risk of the neighbor looking at you in the middle of the night. You could go there in the afternoon and just steal everything, or TVs, or even kettles, Smeg kettles, Smeg toasters. It costs like $6,000 just for a toaster. They just go and take them out, and no one's going to know better until your cleaners get there or your guest gets there and says, hey, this is a bit strange. You're missing a whole lot of furniture and equipment in this place. What happened? And you won't even know better. You probably won't even have CCTV cameras to go and identify what happened to your place and your unit. And the worst thing is that your insurance probably isn't going to pay because there's no forced entry. And Airbnb isn't going to pay because no one booked. Because remember, there's a $3 million insurance that Airbnb gives for every booking in case things get damaged, broken, lost, even theft. But you're going to have to prove that. And in this case, there's no way for you to prove it. I am really concerned about that. Now, of course, I have a solution. But just if you can picture that, it's the same even if you've never started an Airbnb. If you are a property investor and you do a general buy-to-let, what is stopping one of your tenants from last year, the year before, breaking into your new tenant's place, your place that the new tenant is in, and cleaning it out, but they don't have to break in because they have the same keys that you had 3 years ago. So are you rekeying your property? And in the Airbnb world, it's something which is going to come with a big wake-up call when the people that we don't want to know realize that this is such an easy haul. Now, I've thought about this. I see it coming, and I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't cause such a panic that guests now say, I don't want to use Airbnb because how do I know someone's not going to come in the middle of the night from last week and clean me out while I'm sleeping there myself as a guest? That would petrify me. So how are we going to ensure all of these things are in place and are there to secure both our safety as landlords and our own furniture, but more importantly, that of our guests, the guest safety? Every time I go into an Airbnb and I just use a key, I just keep thinking, I wonder who else has had this key and who has a copy of this key and can come into my place in the middle of the night and just, I don't know, I hope not do anything bad, but they could. So what's the solution? Well, right from day one, I've been very clear that I want to make sure that I'm one of the best Airbnbs in the area, because all of these things are important. And if you've done any of my courses, which are available on SAPIN, and if you come to some of our one-day workshops, I really explain all these kinds of things, from the cameras that are watching through to how we set up the place, to support a quick and economical and efficient clean, what linen to use, what kind of appliances, cutlery, crockery, the furniture, should we use sleeper couches, how do we list it, all these kinds of things we chat about. But in this case, the access, the automating of the access, I'm a huge fan of smart locks. And what I mean by smart locks are locks that are digital and smart. They're enabled with the Wi-Fi, and it links into either Airbnb or into the software that I use, and it changes the code that the guest will use and limits it to just the period of time that guest is there, which means that if the guest comes early, they can't get in. The guest can access it using the code that they've got, and when the guest leaves, the code terminates automatically. I don't have to do it. I don't have to update it. It does that automatically through the software that Airbnb provides, or through the channel manager, the software that I use for my bookings that also manages this. So that means that no one can come back and get into the place next week or the week after, because their code will have changed. Now, what's amazing is the amount of smart locks that we are seeing on the market at the moment are huge. I mean, in the US, you will see pages and pages on Amazon.com of smart locks that do exactly this kind of stuff. Here in South Africa, because for some reason we still kind of feel, no, the old lock is still fine and we don't have to do anything else, or we don't want to spend money, maybe 3,000-4,000 Rand on a lock, on a smart lock, then run the risk that if the thieves and the burglars and the do-badders out there figure this out, we're going to be panicking, and we will see that. We're going to see more and more posts complaining that their places were cleaned out, and they don't know why and they don't know how. And worst is they couldn't be reimbursed because they've got no proof that there was a break-in or that there was even theft in the first place. So please, 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 if you're really looking at upping your level of safety, security, and your guest safety, then you do need to upskill yourself and obviously upgrade some of the stuff that we're talking about, which is, like I said, especially the access control. You want to make sure that no one else can access while you're not there. And the great thing is, with those locks, my cleaner has a code, my manager has a code, I have a code, and I can go back into the history and I can see who came in, what time they came in, did they have the right, to come in, all those kinds of things. And I can set all those parameters and I can set all those different criteria from anywhere in the world. Because remember, I said that Airbnb has to create something for me that I can do while I'm away, while I am in Thailand diving, or Bali, or last year in Vietnam in the massive caves that I went to. All those kinds of things are what I want to be doing, and I want guests to be able to check in. And even the best thing is like last week, I had a guest who booked at 8 o'clock in the evening for that night, and half an hour later, they were in the apartment. Because as they're booking, the booking software, Airbnb, it does the same thing, sends my lock their code, which is a specific number, and that's therefore sent automatically to them by their communication and their messaging, so that they can access. And I was fast asleep. Okay, not quite 8 o'clock, but I wasn't fast asleep. I was not online. And all of this happened without me having to do something about it. That, for me, is smart investing. That, for me, is why I'm so passionate about Airbnb, because I can heavily systemize and automate a significant amount of all of this. Just take, for example, that little scenario of this 8 o'clock. The guest booked. Straight away, the messages go back. Hi, welcome to our place. Here are your check-in instructions with your own unique access codes. My cleaners get notified directly that, hey, there's a late check-in tonight. Please make sure that you come tomorrow and you can clean. All of that happens automatically, and it's just part of the parcel. And again, this for me is my strength. It's the stuff that I love doing, because I don't want to sit there just shaking, my guest's hand. I mean, this background that we see here of Cape Town, this is one of my units in Cape Town, and that's a famous kite beach. So here in the ocean, or where all the kite surfers go, it's one of the best kite surfing destinations. And that's why I moved there. I wanted to kite surf. And at that point, when I had started my Airbnb journey, a good 8 to 10 years ago, we had a guest who said, I'm coming across now, I'm going to be there at 4 o'clock. And this is summertime. So, sun is setting 7 o'clock, and the guest says 4 o'clock. The wind is just perfect, and I can see the sea. And I'm standing there waiting outside the garage, waiting for this guest to check in. 4 o'clock came, 5 o'clock came, and 5:45, 1 hour and 45 minutes later, the guest came and like, oh, sorry, we decided we had to do some shopping first before we could arrive. And then I couldn't go kite surfing. And from that moment on, I said, I'm going to make sure I automate the hell out of this whole process, because if I'm going to go kite surfing when the wind is there, I don't want a guest to delay me from being able to live the life that I love to live. And I think that's, again, what is just so important about what we're sharing. So I don't think I've got any other questions, except the simple one is, how do I start Airbnb? And I'll touch base on that. I'll go into that. So please do write your question. I am live with you right now, if you're watching this at 1:24 on the 26th, and on the 26th of June. So you have an opportunity for me to answer it directly. Otherwise, you need to come to our one-day workshops. We're doing one-day workshops in Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg. Alani will definitely put the links in there, which will enable you to come and spend a whole day with us while we unpack all your questions, get you going from whatever level you are at the moment. If it's just a startup, or you're not even there yet, whether you've got 1 and you want to scale, whether you've got 10 and you want to even do more than that, you want to understand automation, you want to understand these things called channel managers. Maybe you just want to optimize your one property that you've got that is your granny flat or a room in your house. Yes, believe it or not, you can actually Airbnb a room while you're living in your house, believe it or not. And you want to earn extra money. And it's actually a great story, because I've got a client at the moment, came down from Joburg, lives in Cape Town, but he's like, man, I want to go and live on the beach. And he's having to find another property somewhere else. And he's saying, well, why don't I go and rent out on the beachfront a beautiful 3-bed, 4-bed apartment, and because I'm working, I leave in the morning, come back at night, well, I can actually rent out the rooms as well. On a nightly rate. And that's what he's now doing, and it's subsidizing his rental. And there he is, instead of paying 40,000 Rand for this rental, this 3-bed, 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms on the beachfront, he's going to have that subsidized at least by half, which means he's only going to pay like 20 grand to live in a 40,000 Rand rental in Cape Town. And that's what we call the rent-to-rent strategy. Now, we rent from a landlord and we sublet on Airbnb with the permission of the landlord. Everything is legal. It is legit. We're not talking, like, oh, you need to be, under the radar and trick the landlord because it's illegal. Nope, it is legal. In the lease, you just change and say that as the tenant, I am able to list this property on platforms such as Airbnb and Booking.com with the landlord's written permission. And there we go. So we need to also then figure out how we convince a landlord to rent to us. And I really want to just unpack this thing about the rent to rent, because traditionally, if you had wanted to invest in property, you would have to buy, in the sense of, sure, okay, we could do back-to-back flips. We could even get under contract a property. We could sell it on in theory, and on transfer day, we do a back-to-back without even having to put a lot of money down. But there's a lot of uncertainty about that. There's a lot of risk, because what happens if I can't sell it? And the moment I put down there in the clause that I'm going to make an offer on that, so it get accepted, subject to certain conditions, it becomes quite a scenario. You need to really be astute about what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to get land and having to buy it and incur all the costs that come along with that if you manage, or if you default to that, in other words, on breach of that offer and that contract, then they can sue you for those damages of the costs that they've lost, etc., etc. So we want to find out, well, how else can we make money using property? And traditionally, we would then buy it, we'd pay a certain amount of money, and then we would rent it out. And then we've got to pay rates, we've got to pay taxes, we've got to pay insurance, and we've got to pay a whole lot of things, including the bond. And in very rare occurrences in South Africa, are you generating positive cash flow with 100% finance on your property. So you're going to have to pay in and then hope that maybe in year 4, 5, 6, 7, there'll be some kind of a cash flow process. Sure, if you're going to do student housing, multi-lets, those are properties that are using creative strategies to increase cash flow and will therefore hopefully cover your costs and also generate profit. Could do, and requires a lot more work. It requires now tenanting 5 or 6 different people. In my student houses, maybe I have to do 11 leases. For every lease, I have to interview 3 or 4 different students. So if I've got 11 spaces to fill and there are 4 or 5 interviews that I'm having per bed, that's 44 and 45 people that I have to process their applications for. That's time intensive, just so that I can break even or slightly cash flow positive. So, well, if you have really deep pockets, and I don't know many people who have deep pockets that they can keep buying houses cash, at some point we're going to realize, man, there has to be another way to do this. And for me, that is the rent to rent. The rent to rent is, well, I'm going to go and rent this property from the landlord, and he or she or they, the company, is going to manage all the issues that they have to handle, rates, taxes, insurance for the building, plus a whole lot of other stuff. And all I'm going to be is a tenant that's going to then rent it on Airbnb. And I'm going to generate money on Airbnb, and it's going to be greater than what I have to pay the landlord, and there is money in my pocket. That's the profits of Airbnb. And the amazing thing is that I can then scale that. I can take 1, 2, 3, 4, and suddenly I'm generating significant amount of money right away. Like within months, I'm generating positive cash flow, which traditionally would take me years to do in the traditional property investing. And of course, then I can't really scale that because I've just got one property. My affordability is only going to give me access to a certain range of properties. And then what am I going to do after that? I'm sorry if I'm not reading your question. I'm going to come to it. I'm just so passionate about this because this for me gives so many investors an opportunity to get going from day one. So many people come to me and say, oh, Robin, we want to really get into property. How do we do so? And they say, well, I've only got like 40,000 Rand. I'm like, well, you're not going to get a property for 40,000 Rand. You can't buy one. And if you don't have good affordability, the bank's not going to lend you millions to go and buy a property because that 40,000 Rand is not even going to pay for transfer duty in most of our place, in most of the property transfers. But in a rent to rent, you could rent something for 15,000. There's your deposit. You got 15,000 as your first month's rent, and maybe you need to, touch it up a bit. Consider that you can even rent it furnished. You don't have to rent it unfurnished. Well, rent it furnished. Then you don't have to put the money into furnishing. And it's actually, if you look at some of my courses, I share my journey about how I started off. I first did a room in my house. Then I did an empty apartment. But I had to spend 70,000 Rand on the furniture back then in 2017, 2018 actually it was 2015, just to furnish that apartment. And then only I realized later, well, wow, I could save 70 grand just by renting an apartment that has already the furniture. And then I could benefit from that and get going from day one. It suddenly made sense that if you're looking to maximize cash flow, the rent to rent is incredible. And like I said, in our one-day workshops, check in the chat again. There's so much there. We're going to cover it both in Cape Town. I think it's coming up fairly soon. We're going to Johannesburg and we're going to Durban. I spent a lot of time in Durban looking at Airbnbs there. A lot of people that we've worked with have created successful Airbnbs there. Some of you know them because they have successful Airbnbs there as well. And of course, that's just the benefit, how to list it, how to put the furniture in, what kind of furniture, how to organize and negotiate your contracts with the cleaners, because cleaners need to come in. I don't recommend you be the cleaner. And trust me, we all at some point do clean because our cleaners might let us down at some point, but these are all the things that we deal with. So it's super exciting. Really, we want to see you there at that one day mastermind, one day course where it's really going to deal with what is your primary interest. If you've got a listing or listings, well, bring it to that day and I'll personally have a look at it and tell you what I would change. Would I change your title? Would I change your description or your photos? South Africans have so much to learn about the marketing of their property. And the marketing I'm talking about is just that. It's what title have you got? Or you're just saying, Unit 24A Rickery Road. I'm like, well, okay, I don't need to know that now. Tell me something nice. And in my listings, for example, it's like no load shedding, close to restaurants, or on the beach, or luxury villa, no load shedding, all bathroom, all bedrooms en suite. In other words, I'm going to make sure I'm getting my message across. Why? Because I want to be listed first. I want to make sure people book me first. I want to make sure I have an occupancy rate between 75 and 100% every month, not just the high season, every month. And I can prove it that that's what I've done. And therefore, I'm going to be chosen first and I'm going to generate that income. Now, this was all great until a few years ago, until I made my course and started sharing all these insights. And now so many of you, I reckon some of you watching this right now, I can see our counter going up, and who are going to watch us have already got the course and have got the Airbnbs and are scaling it to 17, 18, 19, 20. Yes, they've done that many in the space of a year to 2 years. And it is becoming tougher out there because so many people are jumping onto the bandwagon of, oh, there's money in Airbnb. Of course, there's money in Airbnb, but you've got to know what you're doing, because if you don't, you'll just be average, and then it's going to be hard work. And then you'll just say like, oh, wow, I don't know if I want to do this. But that's because you didn't learn how to automate. You didn't learn what are the things you need to put in place at the beginning so that you can monetize this. Or if you've already got a place that you can change and adapt to so that now you can accelerate and make that work, okay? Okay, so Alani, I'm going to just trust that you've got a question here for me. I'm going to jump onto this one that I've got here. I also saw about starting in Cape Town and a whole lot of other stuff. So from what you said, maybe I must do rent to rent and leave the unit I have on normal lease. What's your opinion? My opinion? Do the numbers. For me, property investing is doing the numbers. We've got to check. We've got to check to see, well, what is your unit getting? So those who want to know what your unit is, you know how you traditionally go to either Lightstone or CMA and you'd enter in the property address and it would give you a market-related rental. Well, there's a thing called Air DNA, not Airbnb, but Air DNA, like the DNA of your cells. And that tells you, when you enter in the address, what you could expect you would receive as an annual income if you turn that into an Airbnb. So you put your address, how many rooms, how many bathrooms, and it will tell you. And in my experience, it's a good indicator. Not always accurate because there's so many variations, but it does the same thing like our general leasing properties out there. It scrapes all the Airbnb listings in the area, looks to see what are similar, and gives you out an estimate of what you could be earning. This is the numbers game, people. And of course, I'm going to go and check. Well, here it is. Here's what I'm going to have to pay in rent. How much could I get on Airbnb income? Wow, that's a nice big difference. I'm going to go and grab that. Thank you very much. And in South Africa, from experience, the rule of thumb is you will earn twice the amount on Airbnb as you would as a normal long-term lease. Whether you're in Pretoria, Joburg, Durban, Cape Town, wherever, that's the general rule of thumb. Of course, if you're in the middle of a not so great township, well, I don't necessarily know if you're going to score it there, but in general, it is the case. In Cape Town, I can further say to you that December 15 to January 15 period, you can earn 4 to 5 times what your normal lease would be on that. I'm going to repeat that. You could earn, from my experience, right? Obviously, I can't speak for someone else who doesn't have the skills, for someone else who doesn't apply what we teach. I'm generating between 4 and 5 months rental just for that period of time. That is significant. So my story, if you look at some of the videos, and tells you how that looks. So that's just amazing. So there you go. Okay, do I have suppliers that I can recommend where I can get comfortable furniture like beds, couches? You just bought a 3-bed unit and thinking of trying Airbnb. Well, 100%. Not so much can I suggest which suppliers and furniture and all that. What I can strongly recommend, and the first course talks about this, that's I think the Airbnb part A, which my understanding, if I'm not I think it is that we're actually giving away to people who come on our 1-day course. So we're giving them that already, which means basically the price you're going to pay for our 1-day course is nearly just already, you're getting it for free because you're getting the course, that part A course, if you're signing up for our one-day workshop, and that means you actually get the whole day with me for free in any case. So, well, maybe that's not such a good deal, but that's what we're doing. I chat about that. So the most important thing is more that you can replace any of that furniture, the crockery, the cutlery easily, because you don't want to spend 1 week going to try find all the good deals around you and spend all that time, and then something breaks and now you got to remember, oh, where did we buy all this crockery? And then you've got the mix matching crockery, and it's really ineffective and doesn't work. So you want to make sure that you're really astute in that you can manage this and run it when you are remote and not even there. So many people who've done the course and who come to our day workshops live actually in Joburg and then have their properties in Joburg. They've converted multi-lets into a 5 multi-let property into 5 Airbnb units, and he generates more that way than his multi-lets. So take note of that in Joburg. But they also then have remote in Durban and in Cape Town. And guess what? When they fly down to Cape Town to check on their Airbnb, no, they don't have a holiday, do they? But it's expensed off because they come to check on their property. What a great way to come and see South Africa, is to expense off all these different items, because you're making money on Airbnb, and according to SARS, any expense incurred in the production of income you can deduct as an expense. So all these different kinds of things, right? Even if it's on your property, you might be living on a property and you've got a granny flat, or you've got a garage that you want to convert and put into an Airbnb. One of my first students did this, paid for a good 60% of her bond on her whole house. She loved it so much, she then converted the other side of the garage. And I reckon probably now those 2 Airbnbs, the 2 converted garages, are paying for her to live for free, because all of her costs of her whole house are being generated by those 2 Airbnb incomes. So that would be my request, my suggestion. Make sure that it's replaceable without you wasting time. Because remember, there's no point in creating an Airbnb model that just now saps all your time. That's very inefficient. Okay, what types of properties are the best for rent to rent? For example, sectional title, standalone, etc. All of them are great. All of them. They all have their benefits. They all have their needs. They all have their niches. None that I see stand out better than any other. They will have their different challenges. In the sectional title, access is going to be more challenging, because you can't put a lockbox on the outside of the building, because that is common property and they might restrict that. Obviously, they might say no Airbnb in this building. And again, we are legit here, right? I mean, I want to make sure I'm above the law and I'm not going to do something illegal. So we want to make sure that the sectional title allows for Airbnb in the place. And we also want to make sure that we can automate the check-in. So that's there. Whereas in a house, it's way easier for you to do that, because you can put the lockbox somewhere and you can make a whole lot of plans. And again, come to that one-day workshop with us, because I can share with you a whole range of how to get into body corporates that say you can't put a lockbox there. There are really smart ways using different technology that enables you to get in, same way actually in a house, but there are lots of different ways to do it, especially if they've got post boxes outside. I'll tell you what, if your body corporate has, as they do, the traditional post box, like really, do we still use post boxes? There are ways that you could insert a U-clip that has a chain onto it, and the chain is to a lockbox. So they open up your post box, take out the lockbox, link to a chain so they can't run off with it, and there they can then unscramble the lockbox, get the key, put it back in, and then get in without impacting the outward appearance of the body corporate. So that's worked really well. Okay, let's go on to another question there. So someone said, how do I start? Well, sure, we're in an educational platform here. SAPIN is all about education. There's so much available for free already that's out there, and that should give you a taste. It should appeal to you. If you're not sure that this is for you, go and get clear if it is for you. Like with anything in life, if you feel that drive and you say, well, I want a life like this, I want to travel, I want money, I want to improve my kids' education, I want to send them to university, I want to have one overseas travel holiday every year, then you're starting to link to an internal drive that will get you there, which will then leave you, what's your strategy to get there? And as I said, I have explored so many different strategies because I want to get there quickly. There is none other than the Airbnb, which has gotten me there quicker than all the other ones with the least amount of effort. That's why I'm so passionate about it. And that's just so clear on this. So how do you get started? Well, definitely go and do the research, or why not come to one of the day workshops with us? And as I said, I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to show you the stuff that I do. I'll show you listings. We'll look at some of the other participants' listings. I'm going to share with you how to automate all those things. But most importantly, the thing that I'm most skilled at, I mean, I'm a professional coach, business coach, Airbnb coach, property coach, is I know how to take what you're asking me and how to give it back to you in such a way that you're going to leave there knowing what to do next. Because it's not just, oh, here we go, you can set up a unit like this. That's just paraphrasing. That's stuff you can find on Airbnb. This is resolving your challenges and opening up your mindset to what is possible for you. That's what we're doing. And, considering that when I coach, I'm charging between 5,000 and 7,000 Rand an hour, you're going to get me for literally that day. So that's a no-brainer, right? And I'm going to answer your specific questions. Is an Airbnb association that I should or can join if I want to start one? No, there's no formal association. There are a couple of Facebook groups. If you get the courses that we have here on SAPIN for you, then you join our SAPIN or my personal Airbnb course group. And of course, SAPIN is part of that. So you get that as well. You get access to that. And that's where you can also ask your questions. Because, when I first created the course in COVID, that's the interesting thing. I keep sharing that I said to Andrew, I said, look, Airbnb is big. We knew it was big. We said, let's create a course. And I said, I'm going to create a course for it. And I'm going to actually start a listing. And I'm going to record what I do while I start it, right? That's what I said. And I started it. And it was 2 weeks before COVID hit. And I carried on making the course, and you will see as COVID unfolds, lockdown level 5, 4, 3, I share with you how I still had occupancy during all those different levels and how I changed and adapted and how I set all my cleaners up, all that kind of stuff. So that's there for you, right? So definitely there's a way to start, and now you can get access to that, because we realized that having the knowledge is one thing, but having a community that will answer your questions, give you insight, that's the key. And that's what we found we needed to add, which is why we added that into this scenario. Okay, so let's see. How much you need to set up your first Airbnb? Well, I was going to be sarcastic here. I was going to say, well, if you get a penthouse like I did last year, and I bought it, that cost a lot of money, and then I renovated it, and then I furnished it, and of course, that can cost a lot of money. But then I've had other clients, people who've done the courses literally from day one, who have seen a listing online, spoken to the owner. The owner was great. It was already fully furnished. Why? Because it was from an Airbnb landlord who just said, I can't handle this. I don't know how to work it. I'm not good enough. I don't have the skills. And it was already rent ready, Airbnb ready. Beds, linen, crockery, cutlery, TVs, everything was there. And all this person had to do was pay the rental deposit, as you would if you were doing any rental lease, and then the first month's rent, and took occupation. And you know what the irony is, or not the irony, the benefit is that they had bookings before they even had occupation. Because let's say that I'm taking another penthouse to be the 1st of August, and I'm really going to list that mid-July, so that by the 1st of August, I've already got bookings, literally on the day that I'm taking the transfer and making it work. Well, why not? I mean, I teach it. That's what we're going to talk about. Why must I take transfer and then wait? There's so many creative ways that we can get this going, all legit to get there. And I think that's the thing that I want to share with you, is how to open up this mindset that you have and see that this could be an investing strategy. And I say investing. Someone could say to me, yeah, but Robin, you're just doing a rent to rent. You're not really buying the property. Well, hello, if I buy a property 100% finance from the bank actually owns the property. And in effect, I'm renting it at a very high mortgage rate. Yes, I've got certain rights to the property, but so as a tenant, I do. This is investing. Property investing is making money out of property. And that's exactly what you're doing, even with the rent to rent. Don't let anyone let you know otherwise. The principles are exactly the same. And in effect, you're going to earn way more money than the other person out there who's trying to do it the traditional way. So that's it there. Okay. How much do you need to set up your first Airbnb? I think it's the same question. So If you're going to go unfurnished, it's going to cost you a little bit more. There are certain things that you might need to add or take away. Like, for example, you might need to add certain appliances because maybe that just lifts it up. Like maybe you want I quite like the soda stream bottles because a lot of guests like sparkling water. So, well, put it there. Air fryers are big at the moment. So an air fryer is much easier to get. It's like $2,500, $3,000, and you can put it there. So there are certain things that you could certainly put in if it's unfurnished or if you just want to top that up. But that's the beauty of this. You can get going with the least amount of capital than any other property investing model that I know. Okay. Right. Where else are the questions? Come, people. Where are questions? So we've got probably about another 5 minutes left. Man, we've been going at this, really sharing, like I said, about the things around how to make sure that your place is safe and secure. I'll just give you some other insights around that, which is, like I mentioned, the smart locks. What I also like about the smart lock is it also tells me when it's used. Because if you've had an Airbnb before, you will also sit there sometimes wondering, has the guest actually arrived yet? Because maybe you're not around. You're in a different country or a different city, and well, I hope they've arrived. I don't have arrived. So then you message them, hey, just checking, where you at? Whereas in my case, I know straight away that I can tell the lock to notify me when that code is used, and therefore I know, oh, great, my guests are in, and then my brain can focus on other things as opposed to worrying if the guest hasn't arrived. So all those kinds of things are super important. So coming back to the one-day workshop, like I mentioned, we actually haven't done this before. We did a workshop, Andrew and myself, pre-COVID, to test whether there was a market for people who wanted to do Airbnb, and it was a resounding success. And based on that, I created the courses, the advanced course, and we hit the road running. And it's just blown up so much. It's exploded in the sense of the interest, and everyone's on the bandwagon, and it's so dominating some of the investing circles. But there's so little out there that's going to tell you how to make sure you're doing it well. So this is the first time, if I'm maybe the second, we did a master class, but I don't think that was exactly this. This is us getting together and saying, whether you're starting, whether you're optimizing and increasing your price, your occupancy in your price, or whether you're scaling, that's what we're going to be chatting about. And the thing about this is you wouldn't need to make your money back. Just one night, if what you take away from that one day is one more night's occupancy, you'll nearly have made all your money back. Plus, you're getting the part A of the course, of the advanced section. So you're making money just by literally coming, because that's what it's all about. And we know that the biggest risk to investing is not knowing what you're doing and starting with the wrong skills in the wrong way, and then you give up and say, this is so frustrating, and now you've lost your money. Whereas in this case, you should never be losing your money at all, because we're telling you how to do it. There's a question here, is it possible to use a smart lock at the main entrance as well? Main entrance, Dora, is this the main entrance of a body corporate, or are you saying of your house? Because definitely on the main entrance, I have it. That's where I've got all my smart locks at my front door. Most certainly. And yeah, that's there. Excellent. Just checking if there's anything else. So without any other further questions, I will just keep looking and checking to see. This really is a great opportunity for you to come and ask your questions and see it. There's such an interest in the rent-to-rent model, because there's no other way that you can start or continue or expand. A lot of clients, they came to me, they've got 15 multi-lets, they've got a whole lot of stuff, and they're like, well, Robin, I can't get more bonds because the banks are tight and there's a whole lot of issues around it. Well, why not start rent-to-rent? And that's what they're doing, and they generate a lot more money through that way. And then what happens is you've now got more income coming in. That Airbnb income can also be included in your general income when you apply for another bond, and then you can buy another property. So I've got some students of mine who did exactly that. He grew his portfolio of Airbnb rent-to-rents to I think at that point, it's probably about 6, 7. He took that Airbnb income, showed it to the banks. The bank said, oh, that's great. And they gave him a bond, and he went and then bought a house. And now he has that asset in his own name. And now he has a lot more Airbnbs as well. So very much so there is super important. Okay, Doros, can the gate also have a smart lock? Most certainly. It's a bit more challenging to find smart locks that are weatherproof because they're outside. Most smart locks are, in theory, someone's door, but there are ones out there, and that is something that's really interesting or important to put out there. So just the last sharing, I know that sometimes it has been shared, and it's it was so interesting that one of the webinars that I ran on the Airbnb, I think it was actually even on the SAPIN side, and I shared some of the stats, like I shared some of my income from some of my properties. And one of the listeners messaged one of the other guests that I had and said, like, is this legit or is Robin just lying? Like, is this a scam? And to be honest, like since then, I've actually downplayed the income that I can generate because no one believes me, except those who have done it and can see what is possible. And I'll tell you one of the outrageous ones, luckily it's not mine, so I can share it in that way, is he rented a property, and you might have heard his story, but and he did the course, and he's now expanded, but he rented a property that he's paying, I think he paid about 120,000 Rand rent. So it's a villa, right? Proper 6-bedroom villa. 120,000 Rand per month rent. But just that period of time over Christmas and New Year, remember I said that you can generate about 4 to 5 times that monthly rental. Well, do the math. 120 times 4 and 5 is close to 600,000 Rand, 500 to 600,000 Rand. He generated 500,000 Rand profit just in that December 15 to January 15 period of time on that property. It's just, it's insane. Now, that's why I said, you're going to believe me? I don't know. But that's what is possible. So I'm just showing that there, and it's something for you to certainly think about. Okay, so last questions. Do you feel there's a sweet spot to number of rooms that the Airbnb offers, or is the area dependent? It's actually, I find it's both. It's a little bit more area dependent. Certain places that are more family oriented, 3 bedrooms are great because families aren't going to travel if there's just 1 bedroom, you know. What seems to be hot at the moment, especially globally, are big properties, 6, 7, 8, 9 bedrooms, because if you think that if you can have 15 to 16 people in an 8-bedroom place, the cost per person to rent out, in other words, to book your place is so much lower that these groups of people are now booking places and paying a lot of money, but per person is so much less. So again, it's going to vary to see what's going on. I mean, like, I certainly don't want to go and have to create a booking with 16 people just to go and enjoy a place. But we're looking at what the trends are and where some of the monetizing is. Okay, so there is a whole lot of stuff. I certainly look forward to seeing a whole lot of you at that one day. Lonnie has certainly put the links there. Come on in. As I said, it's all there. Whatever you're paying for that ticket, you're getting back straight away in the course that you're going to get with that, which is the part A on how to set up your Airbnb, the titles. But in the day, you get access to me. And that is, well, of course, that I think is where you will benefit most from, because the stuff you can learn online, you should learn online. The stuff that you need to hear directly from the expert is what you're getting. And that is what's going to totally accelerate you into generating more profits. Okay, so from my side, that's it. We're at 5 to 2. We've spent 55 minutes chatting Airbnb. And of course, it's all about generating those profits so that you too can create the life that you love to live. And I look forward to seeing many of you later on. So from my side and the rest of the team helping out here, have a great rest of the day, and I'll certainly see you on the other side. Thanks, everyone.